today we're actually going to have a special guest on. He is a candidate, a congressional candidate for New York's 12th district, and he is also a housing activist. His name is Peter Harrison, and it is a pleasure to have him on this show. Peter, thank you so much for joining us.
Anna, thank you so much, and thank you for covering housing as much as you have been. You're one of the few people that have been putting light on this issue, so thank you.
Thank you. That's a huge compliment, and I'm really flattered. Now, it's an issue that's so important to me because it's a visual issue. We all see it. We see the homeless population really exploding over the last decade. In Los Angeles, where I live, there are tent encampments all over the place under freeway bridges. It used to be really isolated to the Skid Row area, but now it's everywhere. And this is a problem that impacts every single one of us because a lot of people are one paycheck away from ending up on the streets. And so I really want to talk to you about what you're proposing, because your proposal is incredibly comprehensive. It's ambitious to say the least, and you are proposing it in a district that Donald Trump actually won. So tell me about your homes guarantee plan.
Yeah, sure. So, for me, I've been in this district for 13 years. It was up until a couple of weeks ago, the home district for Donald Trump, but I guess we scared him off down to Florida. Mm-hmm. But, my experience personally with housing insecurity, I've actually had to fight multiple bogus eviction notices, sudden rent hikes, and all kinds of harassment. So that's what really activated me in terms of housing policy. So I take a lot of that very personally as well, and those experiences in housing court and seeing the homelessness crisis as well. So I'm really proud to have been a part of and now running on the Homes Guarantee, which originated in People's Action, which was really one of the first efforts that I'm aware of a really national movement to bring in impacted communities to write a housing plan from the bottom up. This is not what does the real estate industry want? This isn't what developers want. This is very much what home renters and struggling homeowners want. So this is something that I think is very big, very transformative, as you said. But I want to stress it's very possible. It's just a matter of political will to do so. So I think really to start with, the key point to understand in all of this is that I think, the housing crisis is not really just about housing. It's a crisis about capitalism in and of itself. And the fact is there's a lot of money to be made kicking people out of their homes. That will never change under a capitalist system. So where we really start from this plan is to say, okay, the market's not going to fix this. It's part of the problem. So the 5 real big principles of the Homes Guarantee is from that lens to begin with. So the first one is to build 12 million deeply and permanently affordable homes outside of the housing market. The second is to prioritize social housing and public housing specifically. In New York City, we have the largest concentration of publicly owned homes. It's consistently maligned in the media. Tenants are often ignored in terms of their own activism in their developments. But largely speaking, public housing has worked. It's just been starved of federal funding and local funding. So we want to reverse that and build more public housing. The other aspect of this is protecting home renters and what we call them as bank tenants in the housing movement. The idea that even if you have a mortgage, you don't really own your home. Mm-hmm. I think we learned this lesson from the Great Recession, where all of a sudden, the market tanks and the banks come back and take your home and kick you out. So the idea of having a national rent control, as of right rent stabilization, just cause eviction protections, Section 8 benefits for everybody that is eligible for them. Right now, even if you are an eligible family for a Section 8 subsidy, only 1 out of 4 American households actually get it. And then on the the bank tenant side of it, the idea again of protecting homeowners from eviction, the sort of pernicious cycle of, the bank makes their commission, they get their loan, the federal government backs it up. If that person can't make that mortgage payment, see you later, you're out on the street. They flip it and they give it back. They get a second commission. The government still bails it out.
Right.
So the idea of protecting home renters to make sure they have a first right of refusal to make those payments making sure that local non-market actors have a right to maybe take that home off the market if it is back on foreclosure. Then one of the,
Peter,
go ahead. Sorry.
I actually, sorry to interrupt you, but I actually wanted you to elaborate a little bit more on, what your proposal would do for individuals who have mortgages that might end up underwater in an economic collapse. I'm not sure if you've followed this story, but it is something that we've talked about on No Filter. There are now more mortgages given out by non-bank lenders, which are not regulated by Dodd-Frank. And they are giving mortgages to individuals who have incredibly low credit scores. In some cases, they just went bankrupt and have no business taking out these loans. So what would your response be to some of the pushback you might get on that portion of your proposal? Because the argument, and I can just predict it right now, will be, well, these people had no business taking out mortgages, they've done this to themselves, they had no right. What is your response to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit whack-a-mole in this housing market system, because I think, the first primary point is that the Homes Guarantee tries to have different fair lending practices to protect from the sort of non-bank lenders, to relax a lot of the subtle racism and biases within more traditional bank lending practices. So there are a lot of proposals to that point specifically. But I think the bigger point, and one of the bigger questions that I really want to raise, is why does the federal government care so much about creating homeowners? We've had 80 years of housing policy that have been based on this idea of a homeowner nation as some sort of intrinsically good or positive thing. And we end up running into these types of problems where we have a financial system, a built environment, even a social pressure to drive people into home ownership, which, given the scale of the housing crisis and the affordability crisis and the climate crisis, is obviously a bad idea. Mm-hmm. So, of course, if we don't address that fundamentally, we are just going to keep having these kinds of cycles where we relax mortgage lending, or we tighten it in one aspect of the financial market and some other shadier actors come in on the secondary market. So, that's always going to be a whack-a-mole issue. I do think the Homes Guarantee solves a lot of those traditional and non-traditional financial shenanigans. But the larger question here is, why have we been designing a system to promote homeownership when we know it has an immensely racist implication, very bad for the built environment, and has obviously been co-opted by larger financial forces? So that, to me, is a bigger question, and certainly one that I want to bring up in this election cycle.
So how exactly would your Homes Guarantee work? Let's say, you're dealing with an individual who doesn't have a job, is unable to afford rent. Would you simply give that individual a home based on how your plan would work?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think the basic idea is starting from a point of housing is a human right. So everybody deserves a place to live. You mentioned the homelessness population in LA. Same thing in New York City. It has exploded. And again, we're in a period of economic growth for nearly a decade. So it is only going to get worse with the inevitable down cycle. So even to say that somebody that doesn't have a job, or maybe is disabled, has other sort of addictions or disabilities, that they shouldn't have a home, or we shouldn't provide them a home, A, that's cruel, but B, it's also kind of a waste of other resources. We can absolutely house everybody that needs a home, and we can absolutely do that with providing other ancillary services around it. So I come at it from a very simple perspective that everybody that needs a home should have one. These are solvable problems. These are resources that we have, particularly at the federal level, to deploy to solve that goal. So, this idea that if you're not a homeowner, you're somehow a secondary citizen, or if you need rental subsistence or you live in public housing, you're somehow less of an American, or that you don't have a home currently, or you're housing insecure, you don't have a right to a home. I think that's the larger question that we have to challenge, and that's very much what we're doing with the Homes Guarantee. You just challenge that perspective to begin with.
Did you know that TYT Network is now available on YouTube's new streaming platform, YouTube TV? Get access to full TYT episodes and exclusive shows by signing up for YouTube TV today. All new subscribers get a 7-day free trial. So head over to youtube.tv and search for the TYT Network channel.